Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. We will start at about 7:05 while waiting for others to join us.
There's like so many AI note takers
Yeah,
at
man.
this meeting.
So they will hear the note taker notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we will start at 7:05. We will wait for another minute, then we will start the session. All right, we shall not wait any longer. So, hi everyone, I'm Qijie. So, I'm the events manager at Better.SG. So today, I think this is our 7th sessions for the mentor sharing sessions. So this session is also enabled by Meta. And today we have two speakers. Two of them are we have Isaac and Gil. That is going to share. Isaac is going to share about taking AI projects from prototype to productions, and also Gil will share about AI plus fintech, the do's, the don'ts, and also building the right things. Yeah. So the next sessions will be on the 26th of November. So more details will be shared when um in the invites for the next sessions. So I think without further ado, I'll pass the mic to Isaac. Yeah.
All right.
Hold on.
Thanks, Chiche. Hey everyone, my name is Isaac Lee. I'm a volunteer here at Better.SG for some years already. Um, so the context of what we're going to run through today is actually a live project here at Better.SG that was actually vibe coded in its original inception. And we've since deployed that website and project, and it's being used by real users today, right? So the topic is really taking your vibe coding project to reality. And there's a couple of steps in that whole process that I kind of want people to take into account. Just because something is vibe coded doesn't mean that we can ignore a lot of the necessary principles that is required to go to market with a particular product or a feature that you've developed yourself, right? So today we're going to lift under the hood of growingroots.sg. If I can just share my screen here. Hopefully I don't share anything too sensitive, but let's see. So, okay, yeah. So this is Growing Roots SG. Actually, this is the wrong URL. 1 second. Roots.sg. So growingroots.sg is a website dedicated to mapping out all the urban gardens in Singapore. We are trying to basically make it more discoverable for people to volunteer in urban gardens within the country. We have around, I believe now like 16 gardens listed on the platform, but we are trying to grow that number to around 100 or 200 by the end of next year. There's over 2,000 urban gardens in Singapore, and we're just slowly trying to get the details of mapping all these gardens so that we provide necessary information like the volunteering hours, volunteering opportunities that these gardens have, and stuff like that, right? But enough about the project itself. Basically, this particular exercise was to develop a website in which we have a database of farms in Singapore. We have a form that people can submit to list their gardens on our platform after obviously reviewing with our internal team. And a couple of other functionalities that we're including, like blog posts and this interactive map that we have. And we're also going to look to integrate events, gardening events in the website in the future as well. But how all of this was built was using this tool called Firebase Studio, right? For those of you guys who don't know what Firebase Studio is, Firebase Studio is a vibe coding platform developed by Google. Actually, one of the many vibe coding platforms that they've developed, which is particularly powerful because it integrates with the Google Suite of Services. And what that means is that it's built in Firebase project files, which can then be deployed to Cloud Run environments that will build the actual application within Cloud Run. And we can see sort of like the entire process of how a app actually gets built and then gets released into the wider world, right? A couple of things that we'll run through today is what are some of the thought process behind building this using vibe coding, the very long, tedious conversations that I've had with this bot. In fact, like it's still breaking some stuff now, so still working through that. Sort of unlocking what's underneath that code base and what you need to be mindful of when preparing a live product like this. And then also some of the go-to-market tools, right? We'll cover things like Google Search Console to see like what kind of queries people are searching for that are leading them to your site. We'll cover Google Analytics, Microsoft Clarity, which is a monitoring tool that we have, and some of the other considerations for making your project live and actually in production to the wider world, right? So we'll start basically about how vibe coding projects tend to come about, right? Typically, with any, if you guys are familiar with like tools like Lovable or v0.dev, or the multitudes of vibe coding platforms out there, usually you start by asking very, very simple requirements to your AI prompt here. This is basically your chat window in which you're like, okay, create a I don't know, kitchen app, kitchen appliance review app or something. You can ask this to improve your prompt here itself. Some good notes is that typically writing product requirement documents, the more specific you get, the better, right? So actually in this project, when we were ideating the functionalities of the website, we actually went through a long iterative process about thinking of the problem that we're trying to solve, what the model of operation should look like, what are the key features that we need to build, and then also designing and talking about the core functionalities that's required to get the app out. So these are things that you're gonna want to describe when you're first building the application, because they are gonna be fundamental functionalities that the AI is gonna build out for you, that is gonna be the foundation of your website as you add in new features, right? What that means is that if you ask it to build something completely different from what you're going to eventually evolve it into, right, you're gonna arrive at a lot of junk code. What that means is that um, AI tends to add things more than delete stuff. So you're gonna end up with a bunch of functionalities and modules within your code base that's actually not gonna be end up used on your platform, right? There's a couple of examples of these, like you might see, like when I'm looking through the code, I will see like sort of like fragments of um, like commented out sections that the AI has kind of generated beforehand. And then if I delete a feature, that whole section will be gone. Let me see if I can find one good example of that. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So for example, I think some of these components are actually not used by the application today. So what ends up happening is that your code is yeah, correct. Like here is a completely empty file, because what the AI has done is that it's created a different file to serve that function because the original file was not up to a particular specification or what we needed, right? So AI, when you vibe code, right, AI is very good at adding things, but it's very scared to delete things. So it's very important when you start your project that you define the requirements very, very carefully, and the key features that you want to have from the get-go, or you're gonna have to do a lot of cleaning up down the line, right? So I'm pretty sure like both these files are completely not used at all. And the AI has just refused to delete it because I've not done any kind of cleanup or not asked it to specifically clean up certain portions, which as your developer, as you're a idea guy, you're trying to move fast, you're trying to build new things, you're not really gonna have the time to come into the code and clean it up. And that can actually lead to very, very annoying situations where the AI is reading these old files and trying to make changes to different versions of these files, and we'll go in a loop. And that's where like a lot of vibe coding projects, you get very, very frustrated when the AI doesn't really know where to start or what to change because the wiring gets confusing. Trust me, I use vibe coding for a lot of projects, both in the site projects that I'm working on and also in my day job, and you can imagine the complexity of some of these features get blown up quite a bit. So the cleaner you start your project, the less of these like empty files or like commented out code are gonna be there. The easier it is for the AI to read your project and then make changes accordingly. So that's like sort of where you kind of start, right? You want to make sure that for your application to be production ready, you define your requirements very early on. The other thing is that once you sort of have your project set up, you have the features, the preview is looking good, you're gonna want to publish your application, right? Um, but before that, always take note of the checkpoints so that you can roll back to when things work. Firebase Studio is great because, like many of the vibe coding platforms today, it has a preview window which will showcase what your app is actually going to look like. And this is actually dynamic in like width, right? So if I want to see the mobile view, I can do that as well. Um, and it's very important to test things within this preview window. Some things it doesn't do well is that if you need authorization that is only available in production environments, because this is considered a dev environment, right? What ends up happening is that some of the authentications can fail in the development environment, which makes it very, very hard to test for things like authentication required pages, right? So one example is if I'm trying to visit this page, which is actually a guarded page on our app, I think it would fail in the dev environment because it requires Google sign-on. Right? So, but the good thing is that for like public-facing things, it's fine. It should be able to preview no problem, unless you're calling any kind of authenticated endpoints that require a valid production token or what have you, right? Um, sorry, getting a little bit technical here, but basically, the preview window is a very, very good place for you to just ensure that things are looking how you want them to look like before you actually publish to production, right? Yeah, so this is a good example. You'll see like this is actually an admin page that we have, and I need to sign in with Google. But if I try to sign in with Google here, it will break a bunch of things, or it will fail the authentication because the dev environment doesn't actually work with Google single sign-on, right? But again, once you have everything kind of set up and you're ready to publish, then in the Firebase Studio example, it will go through this process of publishing it to a Firebase project. A Firebase project will then do sort of like an app build workflow. So basically, it's a bunch of like let me see if I can go to the build details. Da, da, da. Yeah, you see like the servers, the region is deployed to, and then you can even see the cloud run build logs, right? And this is where it's like packaging everything like and getting ready to be built. And it's very, very good because you can see everything that it does. And if something is going wrong with deploying the app, it also tells you what's going wrong here. And then you can just copy what that error code is, paste it back into your prototyper, and then ask it to fix whatever that is, right? So that's why I particularly like Firebase Studio, because a lot of other vibe coding platforms out there tend to only just fail deployment and don't really tell you why. And for the most part, most of us being vibe coders, being very non-technical people, like I myself am a product manager. I don't really code on a day-to-day basis, but I'm doing a lot of this stuff now. I don't really know why certain things fail to build, right? And honestly, I don't want to know, right? So I just want to copy the error code, paste it in my vibe coding platform, ask it to fix it, and then just scold the AI until it actually does its job properly. So this is a very good way to see the entire workflow. You can see like whatever errors that get triggered and stuff like that along the process, and deploy your app live, right? One of the things to note is that when you're going live with your project, you're gonna want to also end up buying a domain, right? So the URL you see here is a URL that gets generated by Firebase Studio. It will be like this studio dash dash whatever your project's called, the host server, and then your host app, right? And this is not a production URL. I mean, this is the production environment, but it's not something that users would pick up, and it's not going to get indexed by Google or any AI systems out there, right? This is purely for you to test your deployment, and other people can access this page live, but it's not going to get picked up by any of the web crawlers out there. So what you're going to want to do, anyway, it also doesn't look great. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to buy a domain. And that can be bought from, there's multiple different vendor providers out there. The ones we're using is called Vodian. Ironically, Their login page is not working today, so I can't show you what's going on under the hood. It kind of goes to show that even non-vibe coded platforms can kind of break, right? But basically, they are one of those guys who offer .SG URLs, and they're relatively cheap, so I tend to use them. But you can buy like from GoDaddy, or there's other providers out there that will you're able to buy a domain from. One thing to note for .SG URL, you actually need to verify yourself as an owner. They will actually ask for your sync pass and shit. So you just got to be a bit careful, and make sure that you're on top of that. Otherwise, I think like IMDA will come down knocking on your door and stuff. So if you're buying a .sg domain, you need to verify that under the registry of verified website owners, and then you should be fine. So once you buy that domain, then in your project file settings, you're gonna want to include that domain here. And adding that domain is just a matter of like specifying that domain. They'll give you a bunch of setup requirements, but it's relatively straightforward. You just follow the instructions, and then add that domain, and that domain should now point to your deployed app, right? So that should be like the next step after publishing your project. If you really want people to view your project, that's when I would start to show off what you built once you have a proper domain set up for that project file. I'm pretty sure it's easy to do on Lovable and v0.dev as well. But a lot of people kind of miss this step when they're sharing their projects. You have to pay. This is kind of where you have to pay money. But also when you're using like vibe coding platforms and setting up the Firebase environment, there can be some minor billing charges. But honestly, it's like a couple of dollars a month. It's not like super expensive, right? But that's step number 2. Okay, now you've deployed your app onto a public domain. It's now in a easily searchable and friendly URL. There's a couple of things to note on that, right? So when you set up your domain and you have that public URL now, right? And you want to make it discoverable, you should also take into account things like SEO parameters and meta tags and stuff like that as well, right? These are more the domain of your SEO specialists, or if you work in the marketing field. Nowadays, everyone talks about like AI optimization and stuff like that. But you can see that like things like meta descriptions get picked up, and your favicon and all that gets picked up as well. And that matters to people discovering your project as well, right? So it's important to also make sure that when you're coding out your platform, that the AI also does handle for these things, so that when eventually it gets indexed by Google or by AI, you can see you have some control and you understand where and how it's going to get represented under the search results that come up, right? Okay, so we've talked about that. Now, let's talk about the other go-to-market requirements for launching any kind of project, right? The very first thing you're going to want to do is set up Google Search Console. And the reason for this is it gives you an idea on how people are discovering you online, right? If you have a project, especially something that you want to scale and you want people to discover your pages, you're gonna want to set up Google Search Console. And it's very, very simple. There's a couple of things that they'll ask you to do for DNS verification, which is basically just plugging in a line of code in your header component for your page. Just ask AI to do it, honestly. And then it will ask you to verify your domain. Once that is launched into your public domain, you just click verify and adds the project to your Google Search Console, right? And this is very, very important because not only does it show you what people search for that ends up appearing in the search results, but also what ends up getting clicks on your pages, right? So we can see like the page performance as well. The impressions here is how much they get indexed, and the clicks is how many people have actually clicked into the page from the search results that they're seeing. And because this is owned by Google, this is all completely free. You can see breakdowns by countries as well, what kind of devices people are using that discover your app. And this is very important because it tells you what you're trying to optimize for as well, right? So Google search optimization has been around forever. It's an exercise in itself and an expertise in itself. But it's very, very important, especially if you want to scale something that is public facing in the future, right? It also gives you a great insights reports about like what's trending up, what's trending down, the search term that people are using to discover your platform. Simple things like whether or not your sitemap's discoverable and stuff like that, right? You'll also kind of like judge your website on like page speed and stuff. But this one, not super, super important, but you can run analyses like this as well and see the diagnosis of the performance. One thing to note is that AI doesn't really optimize for performance. So it's kind of good to just do like sense checks of how fast your page is able to render. There's also other analytical tools that are free, like Lighthouse, I think, is one of them. But you can see, hey, very good, 97% performance on desktop, but not so good on mobile. So there's things that we can optimize based on this information over time as we analyze, right? So Google Search Console is like step 2 after you got your domain, right? To help people discover your platform that you're building. Step 3 is Google Analytics. Again, free, again, by Google. But this is extremely important because this is going to track users to your website, right? So we can view how many active users have been on the platform from the last 7 days, right? And it's like 60 users there. We can see what events have happened, like, and this is like them clicking on things within our website. We can see where they're coming from and stuff like that. Interestingly, you can also see, if you look at the breakdown on the right here, sort of how people are discovering us, right? So direct is basically people clicking directly on your URL link, not through a Google search, but someone has shared something with them or what. And then the other thing is also like referral pages, right? What other pages are linking to your page? Interestingly, we're getting picked up by ChatGPT for like 4 of the sessions that happen, which is great. But yeah. So as you're developing your vibe coding platform, you're gonna want to make sure that all these go-to-market components are also covered, including understanding how people are discovering you and understanding where they're coming from, right? Because this is then going to inform what you're gonna want to continue to develop on as you vibe code your platform out. The fourth thing you're gonna want to do is hook it up to Microsoft Clarity. So Microsoft Clarity is integrated with Google Analytics, and this effectively allows you to stalk who's using your platform as well, right? So for example, we know right now there's 2 live users on our platform. It's probably you guys who are visiting the website, but it's also probably me. And you can see as well the recordings of the last 30 days of who has viewed what and clicked what, right? So you can literally see like people like scrolling and visiting the pages on your website. And from a product management perspective, this is how we kind of understand user behavior without having to interview users. And this is a very, very good tool for us to also understand which points are breaking, like which links are breaking, right? Because again, AI is very good at building things, it's not very good at deleting things. And then part of that as well is it doesn't delete broken links, right? It doesn't scan your project for broken links or anything like that. So you're gonna want to rely on these other platforms to help optimize your website as well, right? Yeah. And it does things like heat maps as well. It breaks down like okay, how many page visits, where are people clicking on your page, right? So this is the mobile view. You can see like where people are clicking on. And it's very important because when you're designing a page, the primary CTA should be number 1, right? So that's what thankfully we're seeing here. And you can see like user behavior of how like people are scrolling down and clicking on other things in your application and stuff like that as well, which is very useful information for us. Because if people are not doing the primary action we want them to do, we're going to want to redesign certain components and stuff like that down the line, right? Okay. How much time do I have left, Cheetah?
Actually, a bit overrun the timing
Okay,
for the
sorry.
sharing. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. But anyway, these are like the main tools in addition to whatever vibe coded platform that you have that you're gonna want to take into account if you're doing something live. Right? Yeah. I think I'll leave it there. The only one other thing to note is do read up on regulatory guidelines for the industry in which you're developing for. Vibe coding platforms are great for certain industries that are a lot more experimental. But for example, in the finance industry, for me personally, MES is a requirement for us to do like a maker-checker function. And you can't say that the AI is the maker and you're the checker. There needs to be like a controls process in place and all that. So these things can end up not allowing you to deploy certain projects to production users. Do check with the regulation, and also if you can consult some of the IT experts we have in Better.SG. They are very, very good at understanding a lot of the requirements to make sure that your platform is not only compliant with whatever regulatory laws, but it's also secure from a cybersecurity perspective. Because in the social space, we do deal with a lot of personal information as well. So we want to ensure that that's also secure as you roll out these projects. Yeah. Okay, that's all I had on my end.
Cool. Thanks, Isaac. Yeah, I think we will leave the question to the Q&A. We still have a bit of time. Now I will pass to Gil for the sharing. Yeah.
Let me just pull up everything and start sharing screen and trying to live up to this excellent sharing by Isaac, which by the way, after this, I'm gonna go try, like, because I've read about this new Google tool for a while. I've always wanted to try Fire Studio, but now is the day. Today is the day. All right. And my laptop is old and Gamma is not, and they are not liking each other. There we go. Okay. First of all, everyone can hear me. Let me know if I am being muted or if I'm being silly. All right. So, first things first. Hi, everyone. My name is Gil. I am the VP of Product for Data and AI at SGX. And I was asked to come here and basically arm you with what you need to build a good career in fintech, right? The goal of this program at the end of the day is build careers and contribute to the economy and the country. So happy to do what little I can to help guide you on this brave and adventurous path that you've chosen for yourself, right? So why now, basically, right? Because now is the best time for you to shine. Fintech is booming. AI is booming. I know the job market looks bleak. I know things look tough in the overall macro, but nobody is better positioned than you right now to rock a career in this field, right? Now is your time to shine, pretty much. There, you have a lot of tailwinds. AI Singapore is here. MAS is pushing a lot of talent and a lot of support and a lot of funding towards getting you off the ground. Singapore is the best place in the region to get into fintech and to launch anything. Either find a job or launch a thing. Now is your time, guys. Hangouts, books. Now is your time, folks. So let's get to some do's and don'ts to help set you up for success, right? Both in Singapore, both in the current macro, and pretty much almost always, right? Ooh, screen is being cropped. Lovely, right? Do number one, right? Because as we've said, the title of the talk is do's and don'ts and building the right thing. So do number one is build. Just build. Doesn't matter what. If you want to focus on AI ML, especially, then GitHub and Hugging Face are your best friends, right? There's no way that you get a good role in tech, especially in AI ML, without at least a nice GitHub portfolio or something on Hugging Face. When I'm hiring for roles for AI, I will ask every recruiter, highlight to me anyone who has a Hugging Face profile. I will review them first. And if you're wondering what to build, honestly, it doesn't matter, whatever you're having fun with. If you're enjoying it, this is the best thing to build. If you're looking for ideas to specifically go into fintech, anything that touches any financial products will highlight you. It can be as wild as algo trading, or it can be as small as stock ticker dashboards, right? And anything in between, portfolio analysis, products, whatever it is you do, build, talk about this, test it, let people play with it. It will suck. It is okay. The first step to being great at something is sucking at something. And we all sucked at AI ML at some point, at finance, at fintech. We're all terrible at something. Just build. It's okay. Have fun with it. All right. So do number one, build. Build and build publicly and build up your portfolio. Right. Second, let's get tactical with fintech, especially in Singapore. Fun fact for Isaac and for the rest of you listening, MAS doesn't always have a problem with an AI maker and a human checker, right? So know your constraints well and respect your constraints well, right? There are so many things that we want to build that we just can't because there is no easy solution. Know your compliance, know your regulation, especially in FSI. Isaac raised this point. He is very right. Okay. You do not want to mess with PII and SPII regulation. People do go to prison for these kind of things, and for good reason, right? People should go to prison if they mess with your data. Some ideas, for example, and the relevancy for them for AI ML in particular, where do you get your user data from to train your models? Did they consent? Could they be construed to have consented, which is an article there, which is a bit fuzzy, but be careful when you play with it. Where is your data currently? For example, PII and SPII and CII and whatever kind of sensitive data you have is not allowed to leave physical Singapore. Anyone wants to guess where ChatGPT is hosted? Not in Singapore. These are the kind of problems that you need to solve in this field. Where is your data? How do you use AI and ML with these constraints, right? Which is not always a bad thing. One thing that we built internally in my previous company, we called Robo Lawyer, just to help us navigate all this nonsense. We just loaded all of the regulation from Singapore into it, and we're like, help us. I want to build this thing. Walk me through what I can do, what I can't do. What is a hard no-go? What is a soft no-go? Right? Right. So that's two. Respect your compliance. Be friends with your compliance. Compliance and audit are not the enemy. Right? Play nice with them. Three. Really, genuinely, honestly, the bottom of my heart, talk to the users. Talk to the people who are going to actually use your product. Fun fact from a little story from the previous company I worked for, right? It was a prominent Singaporean fintech, which should not be named within this conversation. And I was the head of AI, and we wanted to build an assistant to help users pick the right personal loan for them, right? And we sat down, all of us together, and came up pretty much with a super robust, super flexible, highly intelligent system. And we tested it with whatever we can think of. I still remember this one in particular, which is I personally, as an individual in Singapore, would like to take a loan for $20,000, but I can only pay $423 a month. Which bank will offer me the best rates given this zip code and this neighborhood that I live in? I work in this. Which bank gives me the best score and the best loan? And we tested the hell out of it. We sent it out to the market, and we got people asking us how po. How po, in case you're all wondering, as we found out, is Taglish, which is the Filipino Tagalog version of Singlish to how much money can you give me? Our solution was not ready for this. We did not talk to our users. We thought We know what's going to work. It didn't. Talk to your users, ask them, genuinely ask them. And this can be broken down, right? Because I don't know where you'll wind up. If you wind up in the consumer space, if you wind up in the B2C, business to customer space, use the mom test. Go talk to your actual users. Isaac will back me up on the mom test, right? Find the mom test, read the book. It's a very short book. It's a very effective book. It's built for you to ask good questions. Basically, it boils down to ask about the past. Ask what someone has done, not what they will do. If I ask you, hey, will you buy this product? 80 to 90% of you would say yes. If I ask you, hey, have you actually had this problem before? Most of you would say no. On the B2B side, right, a very similar trap is that your buyers are not your users. It's very likely that you build a product which will be used by, for example, customer support people. The person who's buying this is an executive in the finance department. Do not confuse the two. You may be building something for your users, but you also need to consider your buyer, who is actually going to be paying for this product before it gets to the users. Number 4, right? So do number 3, interview your users. Number 4, you live in Singapore, make the most out of it. You're not alone, folks. This is a great time to be in AI/ML, especially in Singapore. And there is so much that the government and the people around you are doing, right? I'm gonna send you later these slides so you can read about what AI Singapore does, what is MAS Pathfinder. And by the way, they have a lovely puffin as their logo, and they're very nice people. SG Innovate, right? EDB will pay for your AI Center of Excellence, or at least a tiny fraction of it, but they like to say they pay for it all. And the people around you. Better.SG have a lot of smart people, and you are all smart people, and you are all going to do great things. Talk to each other. Be like, hey, I have no idea why my model keeps failing, or hey, where do I find data for what's around? People will help. So that was the positive part of the presentation, right? The do's. Let's get into some don'ts. All hard-learned battle scars, right? Do not, whatever you do, if you're in FSI, do not recommend products. Okay? What do I mean? If you are building a solution, let's say a smart assistant for a company that's set for a bank, right? And a user asks, hey, which credit card should I get? And your assistant says, you should get this credit card. It's very good for you and your profile. You have now put the bank in a position of liability, because if the user maxes out on their credit card and goes into debt, they can sue the bank and the bank will lose, right? If you recommend a financial product according to the Singaporean regulation, you are responsible for what the user does with it, or at least liable. So be very careful whenever you have to deal with product recommendations, whatever the product is, insurance, stocks, securities, futures, whatever, you name it. If you're recommending it, do not recommend it. A nice way around this, you can say, oh, let's provide you with some review of your options, or here are the results of your search, right? You never say, here's what you should do, or I recommend this one. Do not even call it recommendation. You are helping users find information. You never recommend. Rule number 2, be very careful where your data is going. We've touched on this before. Singaporean PII is not allowed to leave Singapore, right? But can you send, for example, picture of someone's, marriage certificate to ChatGPT or to Gemini to extract the contents? No, bad, stop. Why? Because PII is not allowed to leave physical Singapore, and how we handle PII is very important. But worse than that, right? Okay, we may be breaking the law, data may leak, right? Because people may be training on these models. Sometimes we're using ChatGPT, we may be using DeepSeek or Kimi K2 and all these other LLMs. And worse is if you do something like this and it gets out, the company you work for will look silly. And companies do not take well to looking silly. So be very, very careful when you handle PII, personally identifiable information, and SPII, which is the higher category of information. Fun fact, PII in Singapore is defined as any combination of data points that can be used to identify an individual. Your name, PII. Your IP, not PII. Your IP and your first name, PII. Right? Your first name, not PII. IP, not PII. Both are. Your email address and whatever, any combination you can use, you can think of. You can, someone's height and address and something. Anyway, get creative, but not too creative, especially not in finance. Okay? Try to find ways around this because constraints are not necessarily the enemy. They could be a good way to get creative. Maybe I'll host my own LLM. Maybe I will replace, by default, every PII I extract from any document with the name Bob, right? Send it to an LLM to analyze, get the results back, and convert from Bob to whatever it was before. All of this done locally, all on your servers. You can get really serious about this with hashing and anonymization, pseudonymization, and tokenizing your data. Some interesting research about tokenizing your data is coming out, which shows maybe it's not perfect, but we'll get into that. But basically, be very careful with your sensitive data. PII or CII in some industries, critical infrastructure information. If you work for the home team, if you work for HTX, if you're going to work for anything that may have secret information, be very careful with where that data is going and what you're doing with it, right? So we've touched on some do's, we've touched on some don'ts. Let's touch a little bit on the last point, which is building the right thing, okay? There are two elements to this. Come on, you can do it. There you go. So, nope, go back. Excellent. So, your users come first, right? Build things that delight your users, whoever your users are, and you will get traction. This is not specific to FSI, but it is sorely lacking in FSI. So doing this would give you a massive advantage, right? FSI tends to be an echo chamber. Capital markets, banks, insurance companies, we all think we know what the user is like. We are all very wrong. Go talk to them and build things that make them happy. It's not an easy thing to do, right? But building things that you're proud of, that make people genuinely delight your users, will lead to all the fancy results that business people like to hear about. Because if you say, I'm building a model, nobody cares. If you're saying, I am delivering top and bottom line growth for sustainable long-term shareholder value, suddenly every business person in the room is like, okay, what you got? What you got? Right? So build things for your users. Do not build evil things, no matter what your business people tell you, right? Earn yourself a good night's sleep. I have seen AI used for debt collection. I did not agree to buy their solution. I blocked it with all my might because damn, that thing is evil. Don't build evil things. Don't use AI for evil. Use your powers for good. You are right now in what I believe is the golden age of AI. This opportunity that you have now to build great things has never happened before. Do great, right? Earn yourself a good night's sleep. Don't do evil, right? So I'm trying to be fast because we don't have a lot of time and we are a bit of time, so I'm rushing through this. If you have any questions, we can dig into them later. But basically, the key message I want to send to you today, you got this. Start now. Build something. Open up your favorite vibe coding tool. You know, Isaac gave us some examples, but you can pick whatever you want, right? Build something fun. Build something interesting. Build something financial in nature. If you have any questions, reach out. I'm very happy to help and chat. And if you have any specific questions or if you need anything, let me know. But yeah, that was me blitzing through it. Back to you, CJ.
Thanks, Gil. Yeah, so I think we are running out of time, but I think Isaac have a question for you, Gil. Yeah, Isaac, you want to ask the question yourself in person?
Yeah, so actually, you're running through the credit card example. I actually have a friend I know of who's building exactly that, but they don't work in the financial industry. And I know like there's a bunch of like bloggers and stuff online that also like recommend products like credit cards and stuff, which would
Like
maybe
my
be
lion, it's okay. We can name him.
But yeah, I was just curious, like I mean people are experimenting with recommendation engines all the time. And I guess for stocks that's a little bit more evident on like sort of the financial constraint there. But for things like credit cards or like, if I want to get more miles on my purchases, like I'm sure someone can build something to help me out. Do they need to worry about these regulations if they're not working in the financial industry?
They do, because once you recommend a financial product, you are liable for the results of its misuse. Which means if you, for example, recommend someone to get Amex Platinum, right? For example, because it maximizes their mileage, good, and you say you should definitely get this, and they max out and they default and they get into debt or they start this ridiculous spiral, which some people do, right? Of getting a credit card, using credit card to pay for everything, finding out the bill is too high, taking a loan to pay for this, then they can struggle with the interest loans. That spiral does not lead to a good place. And if they sue you, you will lose because this applies more to businesses than people, though, right? So if it is a business entity making a recommendation versus I built this hobby bot for fun, maybe it's not an immediate, there's not a huge risk, but it's still a risk to consider. Just go around it. Just tell them, hey, you are looking for a credit card that maximizes miles. Here are three options, right? The user should be the one making the final decision, and you cannot bias them by recommending, because once you do, you're liable. So to your point, can you build a credit card recommender? Yes, as long as it's not recommending anything. It's just, here are some ideas, or pick one of these three, right?
Right. But what if I ask ChatGPT to recommend me a credit card? Can I sue ChatGPT?
If ChatGPT is in Singapore and if ChatGPT recommends to you a financial product and you act on it, then I'm pretty sure they have somewhere in their clause some duck out, cop out liability clause, which means you can sue them and you probably will win. But also, ChatGPT has a lot of money for lawyers, so who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, practically, yes, you can. But it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, I think we are overrun with time, but I really want to mention something. I think today what Isaac and also what Gil been sharing, right, is something more, I think, towards like users and also marketing. It might not be very technical, but I think as a designer myself, I think this is very important because at the end of the day, right, we can go very technical, everything technical, right? But the people who are using a product is still the users, and also business requirement and how you like go to market and stuff. So just want to wrap up this whole like sharing, right? I think we really maybe also a question to give and also Isaac, right? Like how, because you are a product manager and also someone that is in the AI space, right? How do we like balance out like the user needs and also the technicality of like using AI to build products and stuff? Yeah, what should we balance out?
I'll give my perspective first because I
Yeah.
mean my day job is actually as a product manager as well.
Mm.
Fundamentally, users don't care how complex your product is. They just want to understand, they would just want to benefit from that product in some way, right? So it's not just about building a fancy tool, it's also building something people will want to use in the first place. So in product management, there's actually three key risks we tend to manage. One is feasibility risk. Is it even possible to be built from a technical point of view? That's where technical expertise are very valued. The other is usability risk. Can people even understand your product to begin with? And the last thing is value risk. Are people even going to be willing to pay for your product, right? So these are fundamental tenets in product management. Usability risk being one of the huge points where designers like GTA yourself will play a very important role. And even if you build something super technical, the understandability or the traceability of how that logic works is fundamental, not just from a regulatory point of view as well, but from a user. If you give them an output from a black box, they're going to be like, but why, right? So as we develop complex systems, we still need some level of explainability. Actually, explainable AI was a huge thing back in the ML days, even then, on how certain results are derived, just so that we can go to regulators and go to customers and say, this is why you got the result that you got. These are the critical principal components that affected the weightage of the recommendations. Yeah.
What about you? Do you have anything to share?
The reason I avoided getting too technical is because this is a trap that a lot of us fall into very quickly, right? We are given a problem and we dive head first. If we want to talk about recommendation engines, we can talk about cosine similarity to other products, you know, the way we vectorize these products, or we can talk about how do we do comparison to the same user groups, or we can talk about data risks, or we can talk about dimensionality reduction all day long, right? To get the best product recommendation out there. And then we build it, and then the company gets sued, and we lose our jobs, right? It's down to the engineer to understand not just what am I building, but also it's down to us to think why are we building this? How are we building the right thing? How do we deliver value not by building the most complicated solution possible, but by spending as little time as possible to deliver value to the business and to our users, right? And a lot of times, especially in AI ML, we want to build the cool shit. We want a CNN or an RNN that we train on all of this data, and we can build this perfect, super fast solution that does everything well. But GPUs are expensive, and there are waiting times for GPUs. So maybe we should start with ChatGPT without even fine tuning, just some prompt engineering. Send it out, see if it does the job, right? Our duty as engineers is to deliver value, right, to our businesses and to society. And our skill, how easy is it to do this, right? Because it's very easy to build the big and complicated and super technical thing. But we should focus on solving actual problems with minimal effort, preferably.
Cool.
Right? That's my take.
Okay, cool. Okay, thanks, Gil. Thanks, Isaac. Yeah, we are running out of time. Yeah, and thanks for sharing all your insightful knowledge to the mentee and also the attendees here. So I'm gonna end the call. And thanks everyone for attending. Have a good evening. And please connect with Isaac and Gil if y'all want to. I think, yeah, y'all can learn a lot from them also. Yep. Cool.
Thanks,
Thank you.
folks.
See you guys.
Good evening.
You too. Bye, everyone.
Bye.